Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, third day of #SEO Week, the role of user experience and web development in SEO. We're going to be starting in about 5 minutes, but before we begin, I just want to do a quick sound check. So if you could just punch into the question bar in your GoToWebinar panel that you can hear me, that would be great. Once again, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so if you could just punch into the GoToWebinar panel that you can hear me, that would be great. Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. #SEO Week is the third day, the role of user experience in web development in SEO. I still see some people starting to arrive, so we're going to start in about 1 minute. We're so excited that you could join us, so we'll start in about 1 minute. Thanks, guys. Okay, and with that, we're going to start. Hi, everyone. Welcome. If you joined us yesterday, welcome back to Netelixir University's third annual event, #SEO Week. Today, we'll be focusing on the role of user experience in web development and SEO. I'm Julia, your host and Netelixir University coordinator. We are so excited that you could join us today. Before we begin, I just want to go over a few housekeeping guidelines. Any technical difficulties you have during the webinar, please punch it into the question bar and we'll be sure to address it as soon as possible. And also, if you have any questions throughout, we're going to have a live Q&A portion at the end of the webinar where we will answer all of them, so be sure to also punch them into your question bar. And now, before we get into the webinar, here's a little bit about Netelixir. We're a team of 100+ fanatically analytical search marketers operating in 3 countries. To the right, you can see some of our clients. We are both a preferred partner of Google and Bing, and ultimately, our value is to combine our expertise and our proprietary technology to help businesses get found, convert visitors to customers, and acquire game-changing consumer insights. And here's a little bit about what Netelixir can do for you. So on the service side, we offer services such as paid search and shopping management, SEO, and also paid social. We also offer technology in the form of our LXR. We have free tools found in our LXR marketplace for small business, and also paid tools such as our do-it-yourself AdWords Manager LXR Guide for small businesses. We also offer consulting services like web analytics, digital marketing strategy, and on-demand tech support. Here's a little bit about our speakers for today. So you might recognize them from the past 2 webinars. Christy Labarca has worked in the digital marketing industry for about 8 years with a special emphasis on the technical elements in organic search and SEO. She has extensive experience in auditing and identifying causes of deeply rooted technical issues that impact SEO performance for small, medium, and large websites. At Netelixir, Christy helps manage organic search for clients and places emphasis on educating our clients and their teams. And our other speaker for today, Hala Ali, she's the SEO manager at Netelixir. She's been in the digital marketing field for more than a decade and specializes in SEO with a focus on small and mid-sized retailers. She has consulted before with pharmaceutical firms, local business, and sites like Club Wyndham before she joined Netelixir in 2016. So as I mentioned before, today is the 3rd day of our annual #SEO Week event. If you missed any of our previous webinars, such as Tuesdays, the State of SEO in 2017, or Wednesdays, Adopting a Mobile-First SEO Philosophy, be sure to look for the recordings, which will be coming at the end of the week. Today, as I mentioned, is the role of user experience and web development in SEO. And then tomorrow, be sure to tune in for Building a Winning Retail SEO Strategy. And as I mentioned yesterday, we'll be giving away freebies every webinar. Today, we are offering a free tool, a free checklist, a free website migration SEO checklist, sorry. So I know a lot of you are going through major website transitions, and these steps will guide you through the whole process. And a lot of these steps are often overlooked, so be sure to check it out. You can go to that URL right at the bottom of the screen and download it at your earliest convenience. And before we begin, we're going to do a quick poll. Have you ever experienced an extreme drop in SEO following a website change? I'll give you guys a few seconds. Great. So share the results with you guys. So we expected a lot of you to say yes or maybe be unsure. So today we're going to take you through the steps of this major change and just give you some tips on how you can prepare for this major migration. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hala.
Hi everyone, welcome to Netelixir's SEO Week. Today we're going to be going through some important aspects of migration and transition of websites, whether that is changing from one platform to another or it's simply restructuring your URL. Whatever change you have in mind has to be planned out at a very high level and has to take place in different phases to ensure that there are no negative effects on SEO and any other aspect of digital marketing. So in the agenda today, we have a type of website development and UX changes concerned with SEO. We're going to be talking about the high-level SEO elements that you should be considering. We'll be talking about the importance and planning and preparation of the migration or transition of the digital marketing platform, empowering your team with experts, and also the various phases of website launch and migration. So when you're considering a change to your website, what are we really talking about? Are you talking about just simply changing the URL structure, maybe updating some elements of the design, or are you talking about completely re-platforming from one platform to another? For example, you might be using Volusion and have decided to go to Magento. You might be thinking that since the algorithms request mobile-first design, you want a better feel for mobile users. If you have only a mobile or a desktop design, you want a responsive design. Whatever change you are thinking about has to be done in a very, very strategic manner. Without the strategy in place, you will see a negative effect on your traffic, whether it's because of SEO or PPC. Negative effects are always felt if the migration is not done in a very strategic manner. So what are some of the higher level SEO elements you have to consider? If it's a mobile-first design change you're thinking of, you have to understand who your user is and what device they're using. A mobile-first design has to be understood from all these perspectives. You have to go into your analytics. You have to look at which demographic your users fall in. Are they 22-year-olds? Are they 50-year-olds? Are they using Samsung? Are they using iPhone? Does most of your traffic come from tablets? Whatever form your traffic takes, whatever demographic it is, that has to be understood before you design your mobile-first website experience. That has to be completely planned out. It has to be understood and then laid out so that your designers and your developers understand exactly why that change is taking place. Then you think about the user experience and SEO. A lot of times our clients have come up to us and said, oh, we changed the web design. And we realize it only after that change has taken place. This has created fall in ranking. It has created different scenarios which have always affected the web digital marketing negatively. So over here, we really want you to understand that user experience and SEO is an essential part of migration. Whether you're changing your URL structure, whether you're deciding to change platforms, if your SEO team does not know what is happening, they will not be able to protect you from any disasters that are taking place. What would they be able to help you with? They would be able to recommend heat maps. They would say, before you even think about redesigning, understand what your traffic is doing, where they are clicking, where are the pain points, where the funnel is dropping off, what is the attribution being brought to the page. You have to understand how the users are interacting with the website and the conversions are taking place. They will also help you understand the mobile-first design aspects, what technical aspects you have to take care of, how far images should be compressed, how many JavaScript elements you should be rendering, whether coding has to be compressed as well. First fold, second fold has to be understood. The user experience and SEO go hand in hand. If you just tell your designer that you want to redesign, you might miss a lot of elements of SEO, which will then affect your ranking. You decide to re-platform, go from Volusion to Magento, again, you will see a fall in ranking unless and until that fundamental SEO aspects are in place. We have had clients walk in saying we have changed from Volusion to Magento and we're not showing anywhere in indexing. It's a disaster. You lose all form of ranking and it can take months to come back. We've had clients that never told us what was happening and they lost revenue across the board. Not revenue for just a certain period of time. It means no revenue at all for a week or two because they did not make the correct changes. So to understand how important this is, you have to understand that changing platforms, changing designs, changing URL structures is an integral process. It has to be done cohesively through your team. So again, what is the importance of planning and preparation? Website redesigns and migrations involve teams. You have, everyone has different roles and responsibilities. So your designer needs to design the visual aspects. Your developer has to do the coding. You can't assume that your design team and your development team knows how to optimize for organic search. They have to know how search is affected, what are the best practices in order to be able to implement them correctly. If they don't know what they may be missing, you can't blame them when things go wrong. So whenever you make the change in platforms and URL structures, you can at times expect to see a 15 to 20% decrease in traffic. However, that is over a very short period of time. It can be a week or two if your migration process has taken place really well. After that, sites have seen almost as much as 14% spike in traffic, especially when the migration is successfully done. So how do you ensure that you're properly planning and preparing your website for migration? Number one, plan ahead. I don't mean plan ahead for a week. Plan ahead 6 months in advance. You should today have your quarterly strategy in place. If you're planning to launch a website or redesign a website, you should have the architecture already laid down today. Then you should have all your teams introduced to each other. The SEO team should know what the design team is thinking. The design team should know what the development team is doing. And there should be one quality control manager who is managing all these teams. Unless that is done, recommendations fall down, the communication gaps emerge, and a lot of factors that will make this whole migration process successful does not take place properly. So what are some of the sort of tasks that you have to incorporate into your timeline? These are going to be explained by my colleague Christy, who will take you through the various phases of web development and the transition and what sort of elements you should really be looking at. If these are not done, again, properly, success rate goes down. So creating that comprehensive strategy is essential. Christy?
Thank you, Hala. All right, so there's 3 stages of website development changes that we really want to focus on and look at and categorize our tasks within when we're looking at SEO and major website transitions. So the 3 stages, as you can see here, are of course pre-launch, launch, and post-launch. And if you look at our checklist that we have distributed, or you could get, if we could send to you at the end of the webinar, our tasks are actually sorted like this to align with the timeline of your change. When you're going through each of these phases, we just want to make sure and really emphasize that you work together, like Hala said, with all of your teams. So you have your SEO team, your web development team, your design team. You want to make sure that everyone stays on the same page and knows to communicate. So for the pre-launch phase, there's 5 things that we really want to stress today. The first thing is the site crawl. The second will be the staging analysis, redirects, testing website performance, and baseline metrics. And we'll go through each of these in a little bit more detail. So during pre-launch, the first thing we want to look at again is the site crawl. This is often overlooked, and I think we've experienced a lot of clients that kind of don't realize the value of how important it is to understand the ins and outs of your site. And a site crawl will allow you to do that. We'll really get an understanding of all the pages of your site, the content of them, any broken links, whether the meta tags are properly optimized for SEO. So that's really what the goal of the site crawl is. And the most important thing that we want to get from this is understanding if we're changing URLs or changing the structure, which URLs need to be redirected. So if we have a lot of pages indexed in Google, or if some customers or users have their pages bookmarked somewhere and then they go to return to one of those pages, you don't want them to find, to not be able to find what they're looking for. So this is really what's going to allow us to see our site in its entirety and understand what we have to focus on in our SEO efforts. The second part of the pre-launch phase is the staging analysis. So during the staging analysis, our goal is really to ensure that the new site is as optimized as it could be during the pre-launch phase. So the first thing that we do during the staging analysis is make sure that there's a no index or robots tag on the development site or the staging site. And what this actually is this helps us ensure that our current staging site is not being indexed on Google while we still have our old site live. We've actually seen situations where the old site is still live and the development version of the site will somehow end up on Google and actually cause duplicate content issues. So this is a minor tag, a minor task that could have a huge impact. So this is one thing that we look for, again, in the staging analysis. Then, of course, we want to make sure that all content is being transferred over properly and pagination and other technical tags are in place properly ready to be transferred over to the new site. The next thing that we want to talk about is redirects. And this is probably the single most critical, important thing when changing a site that I think, again, is often overlooked. So it's important, and just to explain what a 301 redirect is, we really want to emphasize that a 301 redirect will take a user from an old page or an old URL to the new URL. And it's important to have these set up in place for two reasons, from the user experience standpoint and from the technical standpoint as well. So again, for the user experience, if a consumer or a user is looking for a specific page, we don't want them to go to that page and find a not found, a 404 error. We want them to be taken to something that is what they're looking for or similar to what they're looking for. So from the technical standpoint, it actually transfers the page authority from one URL to another. So if you spend a lot of time on your SEO building up certain pages, we don't want to lose that authority when we change URLs or change sites. We want to make sure we preserve that as much as possible. So a 301 redirect will allow us to do that. It'll allow us to transfer the established page authority from one page, the old page or the old URL, to the new page or the new URL. So again, continuing with the 301 redirects, we really want to emphasize, this is a task that will probably take a good amount of time if you're changing your URLs or getting rid of any pages on your site. But it's time that must be invested, and in order to preserve your organic search efforts and standings, you really want to make sure you take the time to do this. And it is manual work in most cases, actually going through the URLs and seeing what URLs do I have to change, what pages are most important. And again, it does take time. It could take weeks to map these all out in the right manner, but it will be worth it in the end and will help preserve your SEO. Another thing that we really want to emphasize here is, so during the site crawl, we were able to get all the pages from the site that we need to redirect. But another thing that we want to make sure is we want to identify the most valuable pages on our site. So in order to do that, we want to look at performance metrics such as from Google Analytics, from SEMrush or Majestic, and find what are the most important pages on my site. What pages are giving me the most revenue and the most traffic? Which pages are ranking the best in Google? These pages we'll have to place specific or extra emphasis on when mapping out our redirects, just because this helps preserve the established authority of our site. If we overlook a very high-performing page for some reason, we'll see a significant decline in traffic. And we've seen this happen before when clients come to us after they did the change and didn't realize that their URLs are changing, and that Google doesn't know, or no search engine knows, unless you have these 301 redirects set up in place and properly planned out way before launch. So the next part of the pre-launch phase is testing. So we want to make sure that we test the staging site across all devices, especially, of course, mobile, since we have mobile first now with Google. The mobile device is the first test environment that you really want to test the staging site in. And then, of course, you want to test it across different browsers, such as Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Internet Explorer. And here you're really testing for usability, design, and navigation. But you also want to look at some technical standpoints as well to make sure that any technical tags or elements are properly being handled by the browser. The last part of the pre-launch phase that we're going to talk about today is baseline metrics. So we have to make sure that we establish baseline metrics before we launch the site, and generally we recommend doing this probably a week or two before the site launch, because we want to make sure that if there's any changes that once we launch the site, that we catch them quickly and try to fix them. So some of the baseline metrics that we really look to track here are ranking reports. So we want to look at which pages and look at our rankings. What are the highest search volume keywords that we're ranking for, and what are our positions, what pages, and we want to make sure that post-launch we take a look at these and that we preserved our current standing. And of course we want to look at Google Analytics. What are our top pages, and just establish that baseline ranking for our overall traffic in general. And as Hala mentioned earlier, this is true for across all channels, not just SEO. I think for paid, direct, all, you really want to establish baseline metrics and understand everything about your site before you transfer over, so we know if there's any impact when we change. And again, the backlink profile is something you also want to measure. Take a look at some metrics from Majestic or Moz and just see what your current domain authority or trust flow is, just to make sure we weren't impacted once it goes live. And then in the Google Search Console, excuse me, we also want to look at crawl errors. This is specifically very important. That'll help us understand if there was any immediate 404s or not found pages. We want to look at mobile usability and also the number of pages indexed. The last metric that we really want to look at during our pre-launch phase is the page load time. So we want you to test this on both your mobile and your desktop devices to see what is our page load time now. Make sure that you record that. Probably test it on a few different pages. You want to do the home page, maybe a couple of category pages and product pages as well, so we could accurately have an understanding of where we stood before and where we stand after. So at the launch phase, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that your robots text and your no index tags that we previously spoke about are updated. We've seen situations where the robots text was switched over and the developer might have overlooked that the robots file was not updated on the staging site, and therefore the site actually wasn't being indexed in Google. I think Hala mentioned this earlier. So make sure that these are in place. If it wasn't your responsibility to update them, maybe it was the developer or the SEO team, we recommend just making sure that these are properly configured for your site to be indexed by Google. The second thing is looking to make sure that Google Analytics is properly configured for the new site. Regardless of if you're undergoing a domain change or not, you want to make sure that the code is placed on the new site properly. And then you want to prepare to upload and submit a new XML sitemap. So if you change the structure or the navigation of your website, if you have pages you got rid of or new pages that you added, you want to make sure that your XML sitemap appropriately reflects this. So you typically, if your site doesn't have, if your platform doesn't have one dynamically generated for you, you would want to just run a site crawl and get a sitemap generated, uploaded, and then submitted to Google Search Console. If you did for some reason undergo a change of address, of a domain change, you just want to make sure you submit that to Google in the Search Console. But again, this is only applicable if you had a domain address change. And then, of course, we recommend always annotating your changes in Google Analytics to be able to later track any performance changes. So now, immediately following post-launch, we want to test the 301 redirects that we mapped out earlier. So using that 301 redirect map, you want to crawl. You could use a tool such as Screaming Frog or a similar crawler. We want to crawl all of the old URLs. We want to make sure that they're properly redirecting to the new pages that we assign them to. So this is extremely important because we could map out all the 301s we want, but if we don't know for sure that they're implemented properly, then we're going to still lose our page rank and our authority. So by crawling the old URLs, we'll be able to see if that 301 response code is in place. Again, once at this point, we can't crawl the new site to find out if the pages are being redirected to, or there's a way to do it, but it would be very difficult. So the easiest thing in this case is to just crawl the old URLs, and you typically upload the list and just ensure that the 301s are all there and redirecting to the new URLs. So you also want to check for 301 redirect chains. And a redirect chain is typically if your old site had a 301 already in place from an old URL to a new URL, and now we have a new site with a third URL, that's actually slowing down our page time. So it's going from one URL to 2 to 3. We'd rather it go just from the first one to the new one to the third one, the newest one. So when you're checking these 301 redirects, you also want to crawl the site again and check for 301 redirect chains. And when I say crawl the site, I mean crawl the newer version of the site and see if there's any continuous chains. So now we're in the post-launch phase, and what we really recommend doing is keeping a close eye on crawl errors in Google Search Console. Now, Search Console generally won't update for a few days, but we do recommend checking it. I personally check it every single day to make sure there hasn't been a sharp increase in indexing errors, crawling errors, or even a sharp increase or decrease in pages indexed. And as I previously mentioned, we also would recommend running a site crawl again, preferably a site audit, but if that's not possible, at the very least a site crawl to identify any immediate red flags or technical issues. So the last couple of things that we want to do during the post-launch phase, again, is monitor the number of pages indexed in Search Console. If you knew that you were getting rid of pages, if you were trying to prune some of your pages, then we should start to see a decrease in the number of pages indexed. If you weren't, if you were adding pages, then you should see that number either stay or stay the same. Either way, if there's any decline or increase that you weren't expecting, this is where you're going to find it. This and also doing a site search for your domain will tell you how many pages are being indexed. And again, we recommend observing your performance metrics regularly, the benchmark metrics that we spoke about earlier, to see if there's been any potential issues that that could have been looked over, whether technical or from a usability standpoint. By comparing the new metrics and the benchmark metrics, we'll be able to tell, or at least red flag, where these issues are coming from. One of the specific metrics that I just want to place more emphasis on also is page speed, because I think this often is overlooked when you undergo a website change. So sometimes when you do a change, you'll notice, we've actually seen this a few times, that the page speed performance for the newer site will be slower because there's been old tags and codes left on the site. So the developers might do the change and not realize that this code is there. Maybe some old widgets or some old JavaScript or CSS files that aren't visually showing, but they are there in the code, and this is slowing us down. So this is something that we really want to make sure doesn't happen, or if it does, we could clear it up as quickly as possible. And again, we recommend making these making these benchmark analysis on both desktop and mobile devices. So that's pretty much it for the 3 phases of the website migration. And I'll pass it back over to Julia.
Great. Thanks, Christy. Awesome. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a free website migration SEO checklist. I actually just sent the link to the entire audience, so it'll be easy for you to check. And now we're going to move on to our live Q&A. So our first question is, will this recording be available? Yes, of course it will be available. We'll have it, we'll send you an email at the end of the week after all of SEO week, and then we will also upload it to our website. And so now if you could please just start sending some questions over, we can start answering them.
So one of the questions was that is changing the website from HTTPS to HTTP to HTTPS considered a migration. We do consider it a transition because a lot of, with the algorithm changes, a lot of web developers believe that just adding the secure certificate to the domain will help it get ranked better. However, when you add that HTTPS secure certificate, you're changing the URL. That URL change is considered a DNS change. So unless you're updating all the links throughout your website, you're updating any CDN protocols you have, if you have any platform changes that are required for that to take place, canonicals have to change. There are just so many aspects of that HTTP secure certificate going online that it is essential to consider it a migration or change.
Great, thanks, Hala. Okay, another question. Should I update internal links also?
So yeah, we definitely recommend updating your internal links. And the reason that you want to do this is to minimize your page speed. If you're changing your URLs internally, if you're changing your URLs on your site, you definitely want to, you rather have the links go directly to the new URL, the new page, rather than just going through the redirect and having an extra step, which, as we spoke about yesterday, is actually another request in page speed. So definitely want to update your internal links as much as possible.
Great. So I think this is almost a follow-up, but for internal links, is it better to use relative or absolute links?
So we generally recommend, I think this is more depending on the developer and the situation for, what kind of platform you're in and how you handle your site. I personally prefer to use absolute links just because I think that is better. It's more, how do I say this? It's more direct. So if for some reason a crawler doesn't read the link properly, it won't just take them to the prefix part of the link. For anyone who doesn't know, what this actually means is when you have an internal link, you could have the full link, or you could just have anything after the .com. And generally, the crawler will know to follow that link, that it means that Netelixir.com /SEO. The link would just be SEO. But I think it's better to actually have the full URL.
Great, thanks. Okay, another question. Do you see an SEO advantage in switching from a subdomain to a subfolder structure?
Yeah, so we've tested this on Netelixir, and we've done a lot of research and studies on this. There's definitely an advantage in switching from subdomain to subfolder. And I'm assuming this is what you guys mean, the question, that you want to take it from, for example, from blog.netelixir.com to netelixir.com/blog. So we definitely recommend doing this. We've seen increases in performance from doing this. And a lot of e-commerce companies, what they have right now is blog.company.com, just because they might have been using a WordPress blog and that was the easiest way to set it up. But if you can manage to switch it to the subfolder, the subdirectory, which again would be netelixir.com/blog, we definitely recommend doing that if it's going to add content and value to your site.
Great, thank you. So I think that's all we have time for questions for today. Be sure to come back for tomorrow's final day of #SEO Week. And thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye, guys.